So apparently, God is here because of Saitama. Yeah, we got this huge bomb dropped on us in chapter 173 of the One Punch Man manga, and it was all caused because of this one single panel where Sitch explains that Blast thinks that God is coming to Earth for a specific reason. We obviously get no more info kind of elaborating on this, but that has led a ton of people to speculate exactly why it is that Saitama is the reason for God coming to Earth. Well, in today's video, we're going to try and figure that out by using examples and little hints that we've gotten throughout the manga and putting all of this stuff together. I will say that by the end of the video, I think we'll have a pretty good answer to this question. But before we get into that, if you guys enjoy One Punch Man, then this is honestly the only place you have to be, because I post One Punch Man content multiple times a week, from theory videos like this to general discussions to chapter reviews, where this latest chapter that just came out, I was probably the first YouTuber to get a review out once the chapter dropped. So you definitely want to be subscribed with notifications on so you can be the first person to know as soon as a chapter is released. But all right, let's get into figuring out why it is that God is coming for Saitama. Well, like I said in the beginning of the video, in chapter 173, among a ton of exposition, Sitch dropped the little hint that Blast mentioned to him that God is here for a specific reason. And then we see this ominous back shot of Saitama, obviously leading everybody to speculate that who he's referring to is Saitama himself. Well, seeing as how we got no other information on top of that, we're kind of left to speculate what he means by this, right? Well, I think in looking into God's actions that we've seen so far in the manga, we can build a pretty good idea of what his intentions are and what his intentions might be with Saitama. So the first question we kind of have to tackle is, why Saitama specifically? Well, of course, aside from him being the main character of the manga, we can also speculate that the reason that God has a specific interest in Saitama could be because of the fact that Saitama is the only person alive that has removed his limiter. He has no limiter, unlike anybody else in the One Punch Man world. And it's interesting that this might be the case because back when Dr. Genus was explaining the limiter in the first place, he specifically mentioned that God had placed a limiter on all living things to pretty much cap the potential that an individual has. Now, him using the word God here is pretty interesting because, initially we kind of thought that it was like a overall God, like now knowing that there is a character in the One Punch Man universe that is literally just named God, we can kind of connect the dots here and assume that maybe One and Murata meant to imply that this was, the God that we learn is going to be like the next big bad of the story. So assuming that God had actually, created the limiter and placed it on all living things, then obviously someone that was able to remove this limiter would catch his eye because, we don't know a whole lot about the limiter quite yet, but there is a possibility that those who have limiters on them can be more easily controlled or reached out to by God. This could be another way for God to kind of dig his roots on the earth aside from having his God cubes scattered across the planet and reaching out to humans once, the dimensional barrier holding him captive starts to loosen up a bit. Again, there isn't a whole lot of information known about the limiter just yet, but it could have something to do with being able to turn humans into monsters, aside from being another way for God to reach individuals. But you kind of get the idea that the limiter might be really important for God in his quest to possibly taking over the earth or whatever his grand plan is at the end. And seeing as how Saitama is the only person that has no limiter placed on him, he might raise a very serious threat because he is the only individual that is outside the potential control of God. And I also think it's worth focusing on God's intentions in general because although it hasn't straight up been said to us, there are a couple hints sprinkled throughout the manga that kind of give us a good indication as to what God really wants and what his end goal is. So if we look back to when Psychos first merged with Orochi, we get some small hints that God has also implanted some of his power into their transformation, allowing them to get even more powerful than they possibly could have with their merger. And after this transformation is complete, Psychos kind of explains the situation where she appeared to see something that looked like Jupiter, which we now know it was probably God, and everything kind of just started to make sense to her. And she goes on to explain her plan on how she wants to dig her roots into the earth and basically merge with the earth and become a single consciousness. While this might be her specific goal, this might also be an extension of what God wants as well. Because if he wants to come over to take over the planet, whether it be for resources or energy, whatever it is that he's really looking for, it would make sense that the best way to accomplish this goal is to somehow make the entire planet and everybody living on it a single consciousness consciousness so it can do his bidding as he pleases. So okay, now we have the idea that God wants to become a single consciousness with the earth, or do something to kind of keep it within his control, which also supports the idea of him creating the limiter to do this more easily. Well, another step in being able to do that, or being able to do that more easily, is weakening the powers that would be able to oppose him. Well, what's a good solution for that? Well, pretty much wrecking the earth and all of the powerful beings on it, kind of causing some dismay amongst the world, and overall just weakening humanity, society, and the planet itself. So the way we've seen God do this throughout the manga is bestowing power on individuals that have some kind of hate towards humanity and want to see humanity suffer or cause a major shakeup in the way the world is currently running. We see that with Homeless Emperor, how he basically sees humanity as a virus on the earth, damaging it. God shows up and bestows power on him, telling him that he will know what to do with that power, which of course has caused chaos and destruction. Well, when we look at someone like Garo, who also has a hatred towards society and the way the social structure of the world really is, and also wants to see humanity suffer in some way or see some large changes happen in the way the world runs, God shows up again and tries to offer Garo power and says the same thing to him when he says that he will know what to do with that power, which of course again is cause destruction, which he obviously does in that alternate timeline where he pretty much kills everybody with the cosmic radiation that he gives off, which, you know, pretty much meant curtains for the planet if things had stayed that way. So yeah, I think we have a couple examples or hints as to what God's overall goals are, which is to, for some reason, take over the planet and everyone living on it, and take several small steps towards that goal. Well, acknowledging that someone that was able to remove their own limiter, that is now not under any type of potential control of God, and is more than likely extremely powerful due to the fact of just simply removing their limiter, God of course is focusing his attention on Saitama by either trying to get rid of him or trying to make him his new avatar so that he can take care of him that way instead of directly fighting him. We see that in several occasions God tries to find some sort of avatar, so maybe his final goal for Saitama here is to have him become his avatar, because maybe, you know, not having a limiter has something to do with being able to do that, because we see that with Garo, his limiter was quote unquote breaking, so maybe that allowed God to give Garo a little bit of his power versus just becoming a complete avatar. But who knows, you know, this is all speculation here. The whole point of this is to say that God has identified Saitama as a major problem, and it's yet to be seen what steps he's going to take to solve this problem and accomplish his ultimate goals of taking over humanity. But, you know, what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments what you guys think the reason for God coming to Earth has to do with Saitama. It's a really interesting conversation. I mean, this can really go anywhere. This is not the only theory that would make sense, so I definitely want to hear what you guys think in the comment section. Let's see it. But that does it for this one. If you guys enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like, and again, please subscribe so you can get constant One Punch Man content on your YouTube feed. And if you guys want to watch another video where I talk about yet another huge bomb that was dropped on us in chapter 173, then click the video on the screen that you see right now, where I kind of go over the potential next major villain of the series, even though we literally might have just seen the back of his head. I hope you guys have an absolutely wonderful day, and I'll see you guys in the next video.